Okay, so finally, I am recording myself doing my presentation for COMM 240, and I'm doing it on speech codes theory. And I got most of my information from BMY Sable's YouTube channel. I think he was a professor, and he posted a couple clips about 4 years ago for one of his classes, I believe. Okay, so basically, speech code theory meshes linguistics and ethnography to find speech codes among certain cultural groups. A speech code is a system of socially constructed symbols and meanings and rules pertaining to communication conduct. Philipson, who is is a different professor, I believe, or speech code theory analyst. He examined two distinct cultures. It was called Teamsterville and Nakarima, which is American spelled backwards, which I thought was interesting. Philipson's ultimate goal was to develop a theory that explained the relationship between culture and communication. He wanted to move from explanation to prediction, and he developed 6 propositions to do just that. And what I'm going to do is go through these 6 predictions, or propositions, I should say, that he went through. Proposition 1, distinctiveness. Wherever there is a distinctive culture, there is a distinctive speech code. Makes sense. Distinctive speech codes are taken for granted within the community. Every community takes everything for granted, in my certain opinion. If you get comfortable with something, you obviously begin to take it for granted. You don't know what you have till it's lost. Teamsterville was men and women, power, speech and social solidity. In Nakamerica, I don't know if I'm saying that right, it might be Nasurmia. It's American spelled backwards, like I said. Pronounce it how you want. I'm probably saying it wrong, but here we go. Nakamura is metacommunication, or has to do with metacommunication. Individual differences, communication is valued highly in Nakamura, or Nakamuria. Anyways, proposition number 2, multiplicity. In any given speech community, multiple speech codes are developed. Again, makes sense. We can employ dual codes at the same time, and in Teamsterville, improving speech and cultural differences is a big deal in this proposition of multiplicity. Now, in Nakamuria, it's a small talk versus good talk. There's kind of like the difference in quantity versus quality. Has the same kind of thing to do with, if that makes sense. Proposition number 3 has to deal with substance. A speech code involves a culturally distinctive psychology, sociology, and rhetoric. Every speech code tells us something about the people and society who use them. When it comes to psychology, speech codes tell us something about how a community views individuals. When it comes to sociology, speech codes tell us about how the individual functions within the culture. For example, Teamsterville speech codes show a power structure. Speech is not appropriate for men dealing with people of a lower social status, only in equal power situations. For rhetoric, or rhetoric, however you want to pronounce it, discovering truth. For example, honor is valued highly within Teamsterville, dignity for Nick-America. So, when honor is valued in Teamsterville versus dignity for Nakamuria. Now, proposition number 4 is interpretation. And its interpretation is the significance for speaking, which depends on the speech codes used by listeners and speakers to create and interpret their communication. People within the speech community determine what speech codes mean. Important for an ethnographer. Listen to the words that people use is what an ethnographer does. They listen to the words that people use and figure out how they understand those speech acts. Makes sense. I have a specialist in almost everything. Proposition number 5. Cite. The terms, rules, and premises of speech code are inextricably woven into speaking itself. Makes sense. Look for patterns in who talks to whom, in what settings, towards what ends, and about what topics. Social dramas. Public confrontations where one party invokes a moral rule to challenge the conduct of another. Totemizing rituals are careful performance that is a very structured sequence of events that pays homage to a sacred object. Proposition number 6, last but not least. Force. The grateful use of shared speech code is a sufficient condition for predicting, explaining, and controlling the form of the discourse about the intellectual ability, prudence, and morality of communication conduct. According to one of my sources, we can generally predict how people will communicate based on what speech community that person comes from. And that source would be the professor from what I listed before. But yeah, that's basically speech codes theory. It's just how people encode and dissect the way that we speak and the way that we say things. It's almost like sarcasm. We dissect sarcasm. Like, wait a minute, did you really mean that the way that you said it, or are you just kidding? People specialize in stuff like that, which involves and revolves around speech codes theory, and we just kind of take apart and dissect the actual codes in people's speech. And people make a lot of money from it. But yeah, so that's speech codes theory. I went through the 6 steps, or the 6 propositions for you. And to go through them again, the first one was distinctiveness, the second one was multiplicity, the third one was substance, the fourth one was interpretation, the fifth one was cite, and the 6th one was force. And now I'm finally up to my 8 minutes. And yeah, so that's speech codes theory. Please give me a good grade. I know I'm a terrible speaker. Thanks, Mary. Have a good one.